What if I told you that the entire history of the modern English-speaking world was nearly wrecked by one sweaty, axe-wielding and completely unnamed dude from Norway? Think about it. Everything you read, every movie you watch, every song you listen to, the language, the laws, the culture, it all stems from a battle that happened on a tiny wooden bridge in Yorkshire in the year 1066. And this one Viking warrior almost broke it all. You've probably heard of the Battle of Hastings, right? October 14th, year 1066, the Norman invasion, William the Conqueror, that's the big one. But the real game changer happened just 19 days earlier, on September 25th, year 1066, at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. This is where King Harold of Norway, one of the last great Viking kings, and Tostig Godwinson, the exiled brother of the English king, was squaring off against the English king, Harold Godwinson. Imagine the scene. Hardrada's Vikings, tired and caught completely off guard. They were lounging around without their armour because it was a ridiculously hot day, a total fluke for late September England. King Harold Godwinson's army had just marched an insane 185 miles, about 300 kilometres, in just 4 days from London to Yorkshire, a feat of speed historians still marvel at. The Norse force was split, with many on the far side of the River Derwent. They had to cross a narrow wooden bridge to fight. And that's when the one-man wrecking crew stepped up. Why did a single, legendary but ultimately anonymous Viking decide that Bridge was his final stop? He didn't have to. His comrades were on the run, yet this absolute maniac, this unnamed Norse axeman, planted himself right in the middle of the bridge, the only crossing point. He was armed with a massive Dane axe, probably a two-handed beast, and he just started swinging. The entire fresh, heavily armed English army, led by King Harold Godwinson himself, couldn't get across. History books, like the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, confirm this utterly insane bottleneck. This single warrior is said to have personally killed up to 40 English soldiers. He held the entire bridge, giving his Norse army, the invaders, a desperately needed precious hour to form a shield wall and prepare for a real fight. An hour. What does an hour mean in a battle? For the Norwegians, it meant the difference between a total rout and a chance to make a stand. Why is this so mind-bendingly important? Because had that Norse army not been delayed, had Harold Godwinson's army simply rolled over them quickly, they would have been fresh, uninjured, and ready for what came next. The Norse hero finally met his end when an English soldier, supposedly using a small boat or even a barrel, sneaked under the bridge and fatally speared him from below through the gaps in the wooden planks. Total sneak attack. After that, the English army poured across and decimated the Norwegian force. Hardrada and Tostig were both killed, and the Viking threat to England was essentially ended forever. But here's the kicker, the part that rewrites history. King Harold Godwinson's army was exhausted and had been seriously bloodied by the Stamford Bridge battle, even after the win. They barely had time to celebrate before a message arrived. William the Bastard, the Duke of Normandy, had landed his massive invasion force way down south in Sussex. Godwinson had to turn his tired, injured and depleted army right around and march them all the way back down to the south coast, covering another brutal 250 miles or so in a crazy rush. If that one Viking hadn't held the bridge, Godwinson's troops would have been far less tired, less damaged, and they would have arrived at the Battle of Hastings in much better shape. Instead, they fought on a hill near Hastings against William's fresh Norman cavalry. The tired English army was famously defeated. Harold Godwinson was killed, maybe by an arrow to the eye, maybe not. and England was conquered. In less than 3 weeks, from September 25th to October 14th, 1066, one single act of bravery on a small bridge basically determined that you're not speaking a Norse-influenced Anglo-Saxon language today, but one that's heavily mixed with Norman French. That anonymous Norwegian warrior who delayed a king's army for a single hour is the unsung hinge upon which the entire history of Western civilization almost snapped. What other anonymous acts of courage do you think totally changed the world's course?